Welcome to Larry's Topics. Yes, I'm going to break my rule again. It's my channel, my rules. But again, there's going to be some little more to it than most people normally get, realize, whatever. We're going to discuss the Shroud of Turin. The famous, worldly renowned, as doubters would say, supposed burial cloth of Jesus. And how I think it is the actual burial cloth for Jesus and so many other devout Christians and Catholics and that do believe it was the burial shroud of Jesus. I We're gonna take and look into some stuff, details. Alright? You can look at the shroud itself, you can look at the artist rendering that silicone replica of the man in the shroud. Yeah, he made a silicone or was it silicone or it's a more accurate but a sculpture of the man in the shroud, right? Yeah. Excuse me. That being said, if you look at the shroud, there's intricate detailings that was only, have intricate injuries and detailings that only occurred to Jesus. And how do I know this? Because you stop to think about it. The time Jesus was crucified by the Romans had done it so much and so often that they knew exactly, on average, how long a man his size, weight, and build would survive on the cross. And at a minimum, they would have survived 6 hours. That was like the minimum of time, right? So that should tell you how well they have it down to a or down to a science, and they had it down to a science. Certain men with better stamina and endurance, it would take days. And I'm not saying Jesus was a weakling. No, Jesus was no weakling. And that's one thing that people always get wrong with the depictions of Jesus is Jesus. Well, I'm not saying he was jacked, but Jesus had muscle. Remember, he was the son of a carpenter. Until he took over, well, not took over, but after he laid down his carpentry tools, he'd been doing carpentry since he was I think a young teenager is when he started. He was a carpenter. Gave him plenty of time, plenty of experience, and natural exercise from woodworking and stoneworking. So yeah, he's gonna have muscle. And I think you said Jesus was like 6 feet tall. He was a big guy, and he had muscle. And also he weighed, I think it was like 175, 250, or 225, somewhere around there, because, again, he was a bigger guy. He wasn't huge, but he was bigger. I think he was even bigger for his fur being a Jew. at that time. But I digress. All right. So they have his uh his crucifixion timing and that they had figured out to a minimum of 6 hours. They said they figured probably like maybe even 12 to 24, maybe a little longer because he, like I said, he was muscular, and they had it, like I said, they had it down to a science. They had done thousands of crucifixions, and the Romans were meticulous in writing and logging information and that. So when they came to training new soldiers to do certain things and certain jobs, there was documentation so they could use it as a log record, evidence for the emperor of the time, or king or whatever, the emperor, and also for teaching emperor and just know uh, crap, educational purposes. Like I said, it was saying, and just documentation. So if there was any differences, they would have it. So they'd be like, well, this case, this happened with this guy. That didn't happen with these guys. Right? Right. They were pretty meticulous. They were needed to. They wrote this stuff down. They followed the orders to a T. Right? So what'd they do to him? This a Roman soldier kicked him in the face. It was the right side of the face, shattering his orbital socket. Jesus had a black eye, a really bad one. This all shattered, and miraculously his eye didn't fall out but it did swell. Of course, the cheek swelled as well. That's why if you look at older paintings of Jesus, his face is distorted, oddly shaped. And it was because they couldn't do any paintings of Jesus or artist renderings until after the fact he was dead. Because that was sacrilegious, is the best way to put it. Anyhow, he was also he was kicked in the face. He was he had a, he was beaten with sticks or caned as it's also known as. They literally hit him with sticks all over his body. You know, excuse me. They beat him with sticks, and then after they beat him with sticks, I think they had to do it like 30 times, 40 times. He's already in excruciating pain, and then they switch it up, and it's like, oh man, well, we have orders. We're supposed to beat him with a stick. No, we're supposed to whip him with a cat of nine tails. Some people say, oh, it was honey and the cat of nine tails were dipped in honey and covered in glass shards. But in Passions of the Christ, it was cat of nine tails with hooks, metal hooks, and I think even razor blades, or razor blades of the time, on the end, or would be considered maybe even arrowheads or parts of arrowheads. That being said, they were dangerous. They were designed for damage. And in the movie, it shows where a dude hits the table and he rips a chunk of the table off when he pulls the cat of nine tails off. Right? You got these Roman soldiers, and they're whipping him with these cat of nine tails, It just, and you can see in the movie, yeah, it's an exaggeration, but it's to give you an idea of what was done to the poor guy. And yeah, it was bad. I mean, they slice open his back. They hit him in the face, and this is what interesting. When they hit him in the face, the eye that was swollen with and filled with blood, and you couldn't see when they hit him in the face. One of the blades or lanced his eye open, draining the blood so he could open his eye. But it would have been probably like this, not all the way. Anyhow, that happened, and then they slice open his back, rip out a chunk of his flesh from his rib cage. And I believe that happened. They whipped him so much from his back down to his legs. He's all sliced up. He's all tore up, right? Those injuries are there. And then they take, and while this is all going on, of course, you got the mediator, or the guy writing down, the logger. He's logging everything being done to him, and the effects, and counting, probably even logging how many times he was hit with the sticks, and how many times he was hit with the cat of nine tails. Both sets. So he's all sliced up, right? And he's bleeding. And I heard rumors that there was that when they cleaned up the blood, it was like 9 gallons of blood. But I digress. Anyhow, then they take and they get rose bush, parts of a rose bush, and the thorns, and they make him a crown of thorns, and then they shove it on his head, right? Push it down, push it down, push it down, and it's stabbing it into his scalp, right? And then, of course, they put him on the cross, and they figured a minimum of 6 hours. Jesus blew their minds, and he was dead in 3 hours. And that really stuck with him, because no, he should have lasted 6 at least, right? And then there's the last wound, which is the spear in the chest, right? Leading to where they say it pierced his heart. That being said, he's taken down, and someone said, "Oh, they put a cloth over his face so there wouldn't be an image of the face in the Shroud of Turin." Now, here's where that would be not true. One, it was said that in some stories, the cloth that they put over the face before they put the burial shroud on was described as being basically like a thin cheesecloth, right? There is no cloth, so I'm assuming either way, even if it was there, what happened to Jesus, it all be transferred anyway, especially when most people forget, right? Because they say the Shroud of Turin, that image had to come from a certain level of radiation, energy, and whatnot. Because the image is burned in not darkly burnt, but burned so that when you do a negative of it, it looks just like a negative picture with great detailing, right? Right. But the thing is, nobody knew exact injuries that happened to Jesus until more recent years, right? Because the only ones that had information on exact details other than eyewitnesses were the Romans. And they had that down to a science, detailed well, right? So there was a fire in the 12th century, and there was parts of the shroud damaged. That sisters took pieces of cloth and stitched the burns. For one, two. What people don't realize is they took some. When you look at the footage where they took the pieces of the shroud for carbon dating, they took from the spots of where it was burned. So, and there was a fire in the 12th century, and they took bug remnants pieces from that was found with the shroud too. Well, yeah, it's that all said and done. It's all going to carbon date to the 12th century. It's not going to go any further. Right? Right. Now, one huge thing, besides the level of energy or even radiation that would have burned the image into the shroud, besides that, people forget one huge key thing about Jesus after he died. Jesus went to hell. Yeah. The 3 days Jesus was dead, he was in hell, collecting every single soul that wasn't supposed to be there and was freeing them from their imprisonment. The devil got in his face like, you can't do this, you're not supposed to be here, and Jesus is just basically like, shut your face, you have no power over me, I'm more powerful than you, I am God in human form, I'm freeing these people, you don't like it, kick rocks, you know? And the devil just stepped back, and Jesus went through, breaking the chains of the ones that shouldn't have been there, leaving the ones that were there, meant to be there, I think, which I'm pretty sure he did. But maybe he freed all of them. But, and then went back. Jesus was in hell for 3 days. Yeah, he didn't have a physical body in hell, but, it's supposed to be hellfire and brimstone and that. I'm willing to bet by the time he got back on Earth, which was probably almost instantaneous after he freed everyone and they all left hell, even though, fire and that wouldn't hurt him, I'm willing to bet his ass was hot. So you got the radiation from the energy from burning from him re-entering his body. Plus you have the heat that was most likely resonating off his soul because he was in hell. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how the image got burned into it. And the man in the shroud of Turin had the exact same injuries Jesus had. And even no one knew exactly what all injuries Jesus had, other than the Romans, which they weren't, passing around pamphlets. He's done this. So how could they fake it? How would they know? How would anyone be able to do a rendering, knowing exactly everything that happened in great detail? Which there's great detail of the injuries, the crown of thorns, the cuts all over the back from the whipping, the wound from the spear to the heart, the holes in his hands and feet. These are all evidence that he was crucified. This guy was crucified that's in the shroud. It's the exact same injuries as Jesus. Why would someone replicate it? It's just insane. It's totally insane just to make a false religious piece of evidence. That would be totally insane. And you'd have to be a real sick person to recreate something like that. So I'm saying the Shroud of Turin is real.